I was so ready to sit here and do such a positive video today. I was going to talk about all the books that I've loved this year, or do a video on books that have defined my taste, and I'm not in the mood anymore. I'm in the mood to be a hater, so instead I'm going to talk about all the books that I've hated that I've read this year. So far this year, as we currently stand, I have read 99 books, which seems insane, and it probably is. Don't ask me how I do it because I have no idea. But let's talk about all the books that I did not enjoy. And to be honest, for me, it is quite rare that I find books that I absolutely hate, because I'm quite good now at knowing what my reading taste is. Very rare that I get below like a 2.5 stars, but sometimes the hype gets to you, or sometimes you think a book's going to be one thing and it's not. So these are some books that I picked up this year that I just absolutely hated. And I'm going to start with the one that I hated the most first, because why not? I feel really bad because this book was actually recommended to me by a good friend, but I literally hated this book so much, and it is The Madness of Seduced Woman. I love this cover as well, but the book itself was... I felt like her. I felt like I was being drowned in mud. This book follows Agnes, who is young and beautiful and wealthy. She's like literally the most beautiful person that anyone has ever seen. And what does she do with all of these advantages? Well, she just goes around and ruins people's lives. And not even in a fun way, because I could support that, in like a very annoying way. It's basically the story of Agnes falling in obsessive love with this person, and I could actually see why people would like this book, but it was just so not for me. Mainly because I just despised her as a main character. I couldn't stand by any of her decisions. I didn't like being in her mind. I didn't like any of her thoughts. There were passages that were written beautifully, but like it was so long, and I just can't forgive books when they're really long and boring. So yeah, I feel bad for this absolutely scathing review, but I just really did not enjoy this. Next up, we have a fantasy book that I also really did not enjoy. It is A Song of Wraiths and Ruin. I hated this book too, and I think what made it worse was that I was really looking forward to it, and I thought it would be something that I'd really enjoy, and I really just didn't. So this is a West African inspired fantasy book, and it has lots of ingredients that you'd think would make it good, but it just felt so choppy. Like lots of the story didn't quite make sense. Lots of the characters, they didn't really feel like real people. They felt like they were just kind of saying random things to get the story moving along. And I think it just was more disappointing because I haven't picked up a fantasy that hasn't hit in quite a while, and this one I just thought was going to be really good, and it just really wasn't. I did listen to it on audiobook, which might have affected the rating slightly because I find things slightly harder to follow on an audiobook, but yeah, in general this one just really wasn't for me, and it's made me more wary to pick up fantasy, young adult fantasy in particular. So next up is a graphic novel that I really didn't like, and it's such a shame because I love another series by the same author, and that is Paper Girls. So I picked these up after I fell in love with Saga last year, and I had also heard amazing things about Paper Girls, but I just really didn't like them. They were really confusing, and not in kind of a fun, like you've just been dropped into a whole new world kind of confusing, but like in a confusing way where you're not even sure what the general plot is, or what the motivations are, or why we are where we are. Like everything was just happening all at once, and it felt like we had no time with the characters to get to know them, and then also just no time to understand what the plot was. This follows a group of girls who deliver papers around their neighborhood, and then suddenly, I don't even know how to describe the book, just I guess all hell breaks loose, but kind of for no reason, and I'm not really sure how to entirely describe the plot because I honestly didn't really follow it very well. I read the first 3 of these because I found them in a charity shop, and they just did not work for me. I think I'm going to give them away or unhaul them because I do feel like they've got lots of fans and that people really like them, but compared to Saga, which is this author's other series, they just absolutely fall flat. Saga is so good. Yeah, I really didn't enjoy these. So we have a memoir, which I feel bad rating really low, but I don't feel that bad because it's kind of more humorous essays than a full like memoir, and it is Wow No Thank You by Samantha Irby. This one was a weird one because the first essay, I loved it. I thought it was really funny. I was laughing along, and I thought that it would just be so easy and such like an easy, like digestible read. But then the second one was slightly less fun, and then the third one was also the same kind of thing, so it was then less fun, and it was just kind of like the rule of diminishing returns, when by the time I got to the last one, I just did not enjoy them anymore at all because they were so similar. I think that the tone of the humour only really works in short form. It didn't really work in a full book, and overall I think I would have just preferred to have a common theme that would link all of the stories together to kind of make it feel more cohesive. It just felt like lots of different stories kind of telling the same thing in basically the same way, and I was kind of bored by the end. So next up is a hugely popular book, and I wasn't going to pick it up because I thought I might not like it, but then I was given it by my sister. She found it in a charity shop, and I thought, okay, I'll just try it to see what it's like, and I hated it. And it was The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Really didn't like it, but there's nothing really badly wrong with this book. It's just that I'm such a fan of Agatha Christie stories that this just felt like such a cheap copy to me, and I could only help but to compare to Agatha Christie and especially Miss Marple stories. Miss Marple stories are usually based in a village and they're solved by a little old lady, and it's all about village gossip and kind of elderly people and village goings on, and they're very cute and characters are always spot on and so funny, and Miss Marple is always just a great way to lead you through the story. And The Thursday Murder Club is heavily inspired by Miss Marple. I mean, the first Miss Marple story is called like The Tuesday Murder Club, and this is called The Thursday Murder Club. Like that's how heavily inspired they are, but it doesn't really reference it in any kind of fun way. It just feels like a really cheap copy. I didn't really love the characters. Like the only ones that were good were the ones that were basically a rip-off of Miss Marple herself, and I was not intrigued by the mystery. It felt like I had no stakes and I wasn't really interested in it. I feel like for a murder mystery story, I have to at least be kind of interested in trying to figure out the murder, but I just genuinely wasn't, so these were not great. The next book I read for the Women's Prize shortlist, and this was probably my least favourite of the ones on there, and it was Trespasses. This really isn't a bad book. The reason it's so low on my personal list is because I literally hated the main male love interest. Nothing about him was sexy or romantic or appealing in any way. And so when most of the story is focused on this kind of forbidden love story between our main character and the male love interest, I just couldn't get behind it and I just didn't like it. I felt like there wasn't much character growth as well for the main character, and by the end of the story I'm not sure that anyone was in a different position than when we started. I don't know how the events of the story really changed much, and I just felt in general there wasn't much closure by the end of the book. So those are the 6 books that I've rated the lowest so far this year out of the 99 books that I've read. I'm very open to hearing other people's opinions though, so please tell me if you love these books or if you agreed with me and you didn't like them. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.